Hello and welcome to Crimepedia podcast. This week I am your host. I'm Cherry, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime. It is the sunshine-soaked Morgan.
I know the sun is like blasting my face. How are you, Cherry?
I am good. It is. You look like you're like in the path of an angel at the moment, because one side of you is like, like in Ghost, where Patrick Swayze has the light come down to him and she's crying, the one tear down her face. It looks like they're coming to take you back, Yeah,
and it's never like this.
I've never seen
pretty
that.
much the same time.
I've never ever seen
but
that.
But today it's like the sun is just blasting through this window.
Yeah, nice autumn sunshine.
At least I get some sun because I'm down in my basement gulag.
Down in the man cave.
Dark and bat cave. So it's nice to have some actual sunlight down here.
Yeah.
How are you, Cherry?
I'm good. We have got some news this week. We had some news on Instagram. We came across it and posted it to Instagram this week, that one of our cases that we did back last year, episode 37 from April last year, the Lady of the Dunes case, that was one of your cases. Yes. We found out that FBI agents have used genealogy and they've identified her as a lady called Ruth Marie Terry from Tennessee. So now obviously investigations are ongoing, but they have actually identified her, which is absolutely amazing.
That's absolutely amazing.
I'm so happy.
It was not my case, Cherry.
Was
it your case.
Oh, was it? It was my case.
It was yours.
I thought it was yours. Oh, even better then. That's really good.
Yeah. But they know who she is, but it's still unsolved because we don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
How she ended up there and who killed her.
But hopefully now this is a big, huge step that just goes to prove it. That case is another really, really old case. And that now just goes to prove that, still this time on, things can still get put forward. People can still find stuff. I mean, where was she found? It was the Lady of the Dunes was in Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
That's right. It was in Massachusetts on Cape Islands. So, I mean, that's the thing. Even now, all this time later, and they've got a break in the case. So fingers crossed that's going to be solved soon.
I feel these past 2 years have been absolutely amazing when it comes to true crime and solving some of these long overdue cases, right? So Lady of Dunes we have identified. You had last year, of course, you had the Breckenridge murders, which
now got
we
a
had an arrest,
suspect.
and now we have a guilty verdict against the man who did it. You have this 2 weeks ago, since our last episode, you had an arrest in the Delphi murders, which was huge news. It's amazing time.
Well, I mean, the Delphi case is one of those cases that is everywhere. I mean, nearly every single podcast has covered it at some point. We haven't, because we don't feel like we've got anything else to add to help the case. But I mean, we've spoken to the sister of one of the suspects and one of the victims, and now there's a suspect. We now have a pretty decently credible suspect that the police are now going to be focusing on. So fingers crossed, those families are going to get, I don't think it's closure, but they're going to get some answers at least. There's going to be some answers for them, because it's been, 2017 both the girls were murdered. So I mean, come on, we need to get this sorted now, and we need to know if that is the guy that did what he did.
And it's absolutely crazy to me that this guy was right there in the community the whole time, and just living life.
I mean, you'll see it was all over social media all of last week and the week before. So it's very well known. If you don't know the case, our friends over at True Crime Garage, they did some episodes on it, really interesting episodes. So go over and give them their podcast a listen, and you'll be able to hear the whole full story about it. Now, this week's case is a case that is unsolved. This is from we're looking at 1952 this year, so it is at this time. So it is actually a little bit more recent than some of my cases. So this week's case is the murder of Lily Volpert. Cardiff in Wales has the biggest British-born Somali population in the UK. Somalians were originally drawn to Cardiff as seamen at the end of the 19th century, shortly after the opening of the Suez Canal, to work on the thriving docks. One of those Somalians was a man called Mahmoud Hussein Matan. He had worked as a merchant seaman in the Tiger Bay Dockland district of Cardiff. However, life wouldn't pan out well for Mr. Matan, as he would later be found guilty of murdering a local businesswoman. This is Crimepedia, and this is the murder of Lily Volpert. Okay, Morgan, so Lily Volpert was a 41-year-old businesswoman. She was 4'10", so very short. She weighed around 10 stone. I don't know what that is in pounds, but she weighed about 10 stone. She was the owner of a general store, number 203 and number 204 Bute Street in Cardiff, in an area known as Tiger Bay. Now, this was situated in the docks of Cardiff. She had worked in this shop for about 25 years, and she had inherited it from her dad a few years earlier. He had passed away, and she had taken over the family business. She was really well known locally, and she had a really good reputation with people. Now, there were the shop front, it looks very lovely in the pictures, in the old style pictures. The shop front is very typical of that of an old style shop. It's got the big sign outside the front, and then it's got the window, like big glass windows, so you can see right into the shop. And there was, when you go into the shop, there's like a from the floor plan, there's this private quarters, which is where she lived with her sister, who was a widow, and her 10-year-old niece. The shop had like a glass panel door inside, and that led straight into the dining room area of the home. So this sort of building was split up into two parts, the shop and then their private sort of house within the shop. So the sister was a widow. She had a 10-year-old daughter, and Lily wasn't married and didn't have any children. So Lily would usually have the shop open until about 8 p.m. in the evening, but regularly customers would be served after she had closed. Locals knew that she wouldn't just throw them out or decline them because she was closing, so they would regularly ring the doorbell after closing time, and Lily would usually go out and sell them things from the shop. Now, the shop it says it was a general store. It did sell lots of different things, from children's clothing to headscarves to tobacco to all different kinds of things, shoes, that kind of thing. And on March the 6th, 1952, at around 8 o'clock, Lily was closing her shop up. She was ready to go and have supper with the family, and the doorbell to the shop rang. So her sister and her mum were in the private quarters of the shop, and they saw a man outside the shop door. So Lily went to deal with him, as she did sometimes. And a few minutes later, her niece saw her talking to an apparently different man at the door. Now, approximately 8:15 that evening, Lily's body was found by a neighbour lying on the floor in the shop, surrounded by blood. And he had come to the shop to buy cigarettes. It was quite a brutal attack on Lily. Her throat had been cut with a razor, and between about £100 and £130, which is equivalent now to about £3,000, was the take-ins for the whole week that was missing from the till. So when her body was examined, it had been determined that actually she had only been killed a short time before being found. Now, we know that she was closing up at 8, and we know that her sister and her niece saw her talking to a man at the door, and then she was found at 8:15, and she'd been killed. So we know this is a really short window of opportunity for somebody to do this to her. Now, I'm going to say at the beginning of this episode that there are so many different avenues that this case went down, and you'll see why a little bit later, but the police talked to so many different people, and there were quite a few different suspects in this case. But to do that in a 45-minute episode would be very difficult to follow every single one. And to be honest, quite a lot of them are the same old thing. It was the same questioning, the same thing, and the person was then eradicated out of the scenario.
Yeah.
So they were then they were fine. So they didn't have anything to do with it, and they were not in the investigation anymore.
So let me ask you a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Before her body was found,
Yeah.
did anyone report hearing anything, or
No.
was there anything?
No.
Okay, so no one heard anything, even though the living quarters were essentially right next to where this murder occurred.
There was no screaming, nothing like that. They didn't report hearing anything at all.
Okay.
So witnesses came forward to say that she was last seen alive, not by her family, but last seen alive by some other people at 8 p.m. that evening. Now, there were two women that came to the shop just after 8 p.m. Those women were
Mhm.
Mary Tolley and Margaret Bush. And these are two people that play quite an important role in this investigation, which is why I've got them included in the episode. Now, they came to do some shopping, and one of the women said that when she was in the shop, she had noticed, and this is a quote, a dark-skinned man with a mustache outside the shop. Her friend that was with her said she didn't notice any other people in the shop, and that was the end of that. So it was said
Yeah.
that a, quotes again, coloured man was then seen to leave her shop shortly before she was found dead. Now, the police arrived at Lily's shop and the doctor came to examine her body. Now, obviously, we're back in 1952, so the procedures are very different to what they are from today. Now, she had a cut from the underneath centre of her chin right the way through to the back of her neck on the right side. She also had 3 other cuts just below the angle of the jawbone, about an inch long, and these ran into the main cut. So this would suggest, quick succession, quick cuts to try and make this main cut. So I thought straight away that seems quite hasty. 3,
Yeah.
trying to cut it, but not actually cutting, because there's so many other cuts leading into this big main cut around her neck. It was also said that the main cut and the small cuts were about half an inch apart. They also said that there was a cut around the neck on the blouse line. So this person had literally, all the way, exactly, all the way around. So it was
Yeah.
noted that underneath her body there was a cardboard shoebox or a boot box for a pair of children's shoes, which was
Mhm.
imagined then that might be what she was doing before she was killed. She was obviously doing something with this box when she was surprised by somebody, and that might
Yeah.
explain the fact that there was no noise from her. And the other thing, what I thought was, well, did she know this person, which is why there was no noise. She didn't shriek at this man coming towards her
Yeah.
with a big knife or something. So could it have been somebody that she knew? Now, the police said that when they examined the shop, they found out that it would have been possible for an adult to conceal themselves behind a number of things in the shop. There was like a big glass showcase that there were loads of things
Mhm.
in, so you could easily hide behind it. There was a 3-legged stand, like a big model on a 3-legged stand by the doorway. There was also lots of other things. There was like parcels all over the place, which were big enough, or the stacks of parcels were big enough for somebody to hide behind. So it was possible that straight away somebody could have been hiding in there and could have nipped out afterwards. So the doctor had to come and confirm that she was dead. And as well as the extensive bleeding, there were also blood marks on her toes and her knees. The doctor said that he noticed that there was blood in a recess of about 10 to 12 feet at the rear of the premises. And considering the marks on her knees and toes, he thought that Lily may well have crawled from there to where she died.
Mm.
Now, the pathologist carried out her post-mortem, and this was on the 7th of March 1952 at the Pathology Institute in Cardiff. And the pathologist said that externally he found the clothing over Lily's right arm and shoulder to be soaked in blood. He also found that there were bloodstains on her toes, knees and hands, which is what the
Mhm.
doctor said. He also said on the right side of her neck there was an 8-inch long, 2-inch deep cut, which started beneath her chin, half an inch to the left of the midline, and this finished 12 inches behind her 2 inches behind her right ear. Now, he does say that there are 3 short, deep cuts and a 5th cut that's about 4.5 inches long. Now, this is just below the main cut, but this had only just gone through the skin. So to me, this kind of
Mhm.
it feels a bit frenzied, you know?
Y Yeah. It sounds frenzied, and this is the other thing I'm thinking about, of where the cut starts and where it goes to.
Mm.
It almost sounds to me like the person came from her, not quite from behind, but to
Yes.
her side.
Yeah.
And because of this, because of the m how she was murdered and the amount of blood, whoever did this would have been drenched in blood.
Yeah. And the other thing that I thought, this doesn't show very much sophistication and doesn't show very much capability. So this isn't somebody who's used to doing this. It's not somebody who knows how to cut flesh particularly, or somebody perhaps that has done this before, because it seems that there's like hesitation marks where they've cut a few
Mhm.
different times before they've made this big main cut across her neck.
Or the knife that they're using was dull, was too dull.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, they did say it was a sharp instrument, possibly a
Oh,
razor or a
yeah,
sharp object. That's what they've said. I mean, enough to obviously cut
but
skin.
it is, but sharp doesn't necessarily mean it was the knife was sharpened,
No, that's right.
it
Yeah,
just
you're
means that
right.
it was
Yeah.
yeah. So it kind of seems like maybe this whatever knife they were using might have been an older knife, might have been a dull knife,
Hmm.
so they weren't able to do a smooth cut.
That's right. Now, he also said that the main cut had gone through all the soft flesh at the side of her neck and had damaged her backbone. And that's where the bottom of the wound, that's where they believe the bottom of the wound to be. Now, the pathologist also said that Lily's knuckles of the index, middle, and ring fingers on her left hand had torn skin. And at the base of her index finger on that hand, there was a sliced wound of the skin about 1/2 inch long. So that makes me think straight away that perhaps she was actually fighting, because it sounds like defense wounds, that she's actually been cut with this same
Hmm.
knife. He said that
Yeah.
on her left shoulder blade, there was a recent bruise which measured about 3 inches by 2 inches roughly, and then several small bruises on her right shin. He also says that on the top of her scalp, there's a sharply marked out red area, and this is consistent with her hair
Mm.
being pulled. He said that he believed that 5 blows would have been needed to cause the 5 cuts on her body, and that the main cut was inflicted first, perhaps to render her either unconscious or to stop her from moving.
Mhm.
He also said that the effect of each of these cuts would have caused severe hemorrhaging and very limited physical effort, such as walking or crawling a few places. He said that he would have expected to have found a great amount of blood at the place of the attack, which we know that is what's actually happened. The
Mhm.
pathologist
Yeah.
said that the bruise on her shoulder was consistent with the weight of a man. He says that it's quite a heavy man, it's quite heavy weight on the shoulder, which would be like the weight of a knee, with a big part of the man's weight put behind it. So he believed that Lily could have been bent down at the time, and this would be consistent with
Okay.
somebody pulling her hair and putting their knee into her back, into her shoulder blade.
Mm.
Which is what you said about having somebody from behind. He said that the blood marks on her knees and toes are consistent with Lily having dragged herself along on her hands and knees. She was fully clothed except for her footwear. And he noted that she was, listen to this, obese. She was an obese woman. Because she was 4'10", she was 10 stone. That was classed as obese. 10
Wait, how much
stone
is
is
10
not
stone?
obese. I mean, a bit obese
All right.
even. So 10
10
stone,
stone.
yeah,
Hold
10
on.
stone in, because you guys do it in pounds over there, don't you?
Yeah.
It's like
So let's see.
160
10
pounds,
stone,
or maybe 160 pounds.
140.
Oh, okay.
140
So
pounds.
140 pounds is obese back then. I mean, come
Oh
on, it's
my.
100. That's
Yeah.
crazy. So the pathologist said that the cause of death was hemorrhage due to the cut throat. He said that thankfully she would have lost consciousness very quickly. Well, saying very quickly, but within 5 minutes of receiving this main wound. I mean, 5 minutes is a long time if you're in excruciating pain like that. He
Yeah.
noted that all of her organs were healthy and free from disease. And he believed that this attack had been from behind, that the attacker had pulled her hair, put their knee into her back, and then said that an instrument such as a sharp knife or razor would have been used with a great degree of force, and that her wounds were inconsistent with having been self-inflicted. Which, well,
Mhm.
I think that's sort of common, isn't it, like that? Now, he said that the tearing of the skin on her knuckles was consistent with the weight on her back while she was supporting herself on her knuckles. So they believe again that she could have been on the floor at the time, or bending down at the time that this person came and grabbed her. The police report stated that the conclusion of the pathologist report and the other evidence indicated that the murderer had stood behind Lily. It also noted that the importance of that meant that whilst her murderer must have got a quantity of blood on his hand, that there would also be a considerable amount of blood on his clothing.
Yes.
It was noted in the shop there were no blood splashes higher than 18 inches from the floor behind the counter where she had been attacked. So she must have been down quite low when she was attacked, or pushed to the floor when she was attacked.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, as we know with these older cases, a lot of vital evidence they believe was ruined when the police attempted to check her to see if she was still alive.
Of course.
As we
Yeah.
know. And Lily's niece remembers seeing her talking to a man in the entrance of the shop, but couldn't actually describe the man that she saw. She's only 10, so that is understandable. On the 15th of March 1952, a Somalian seaman called Mahmoud Matan was arrested for her murder. Now, he was born in the Hargeisa in British Somaliland. He was born in 1922 or 23. It's not quite known yet. He had come to England as a member of a ship's crew in around 1942. He was employed as a seafarer, and it was stated that he had married a local woman to Cardiff called Laura Williams. Now, they were married at the Cardiff Register Office, and locals were not happy about this marriage because obviously back then there was a lot of racism. He was from Somali, she was from here, and they didn't like it. Now, there were 3 children from the marriage. There was a court order that he would pay £2 a week in child support to her, and he would maintain his wife and his children. They had actually split up, and he was still paying this payment to her every week. He hadn't paid a full payment, but he had been paying something towards his children. Now, it was noted that Mahmoud Matan had appeared before the courts before on 3 different occasions. So he was at Central Criminal Court on the 29th of May 1951. He was demanding money with menaces with intent to steal. That was discharged.
Okay.
He was at Cardiff Magistrates Court on the 31st of December 1951, and that was larceny of a suit and £80 in money. That was also dismissed. Then again at Cardiff Quarter Sessions in 1952, and that was larceny from a mosque. He had a probation order for 3 years, paid £5 in costs and £2 in restitution. It was said in the report that Mahmoud Matan was known to the police and his fellow countrymen as a sneak thief. I've looked up this sneak thief. A sneak thief.
Okay.
So he would take money, and it would be I think an opportunist. I think he's a thief of opportunity. He was arrested after a man called Harold Cover said he saw Mr. Matan leaving Lily's shop on the night of the murder. Now, remember, the 2 women that were last to see her alive said that they had seen this dark-skinned man with a moustache, and the other lady said she saw nothing, had signed an affidavit in 1969 saying she later saw Mahmoud Matan in Bridge Street at 8:15, but then she retracted it. And I found this a lot in this case. The women first say they saw something, then they retract it and say they didn't. Then the police sort of put pressure on them. They say that they saw something again, and then they later retract it again. And this happens a lot in this case. Now, the second woman who said that she saw nothing in the shop or no people in the shop, she signed an affidavit on the 31st of May 1969, shortly after Harold Cover was convicted of something, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about later. She said that she had seen Mahmoud Matan in Bridge Street, which is very close to Lily's shop, wearing his overalls at around 8:15 that evening. She said after having left Lily's shop in Butte Street at 8:05, meaning that he couldn't have carried out the murder at 8:20. But when the police questioned her, she withdrew that statement and said that the police concluded after a review that they saw no grounds to justify looking into what she had said at all. So first of all, she says she didn't see anybody. Then she says she saw this specific man walking with his overalls along the street from where Lily's shop was. Then she retracts it and says, actually, I didn't see anything at all.
Well, she's not a good witness.
Not at all. Not a credible witness at all. Because she's retracted her statement like 2 or 3 times, as is her friend.
But, so she places... let me make sure I got this right. She places them at the scene.
The first lady.
She places them away from the scene.
That's the second woman. Yeah. The first woman says he was there at the scene. The second woman says she didn't see him at the scene, but she saw him 15 minutes later, just down the street.
On the Bridge Street.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then she retracted that and...
Yeah. And said she didn't see anything at all.
Okay.
So this is not very easy. We've got people all over the place saying they saw this, people saying they saw that, and then they retracted it, and it's a mess. Now, the owner of a second-hand clothing shop in Bridge Street, which is about 1.5 miles away from Lily's shop, said that Mahmoud Matan visited her shop between 8:30 and 9 p.m. to buy some clothes. Now, she doesn't say that he was covered in blood. She doesn't say that he was, shifty or was acting strangely. She says that she saw him. He came in. He asked to buy some clothes, And that was the end of that. Now, it's said that at the time of the trial, her evidence was played down because she had known about Lily's murder on the day after her murder, but she hadn't gone to the police until a week later, which was when a £200 reward was offered for information. And so they believe that she had literally just said all of this to try and get some reward money, because £200 is a lot of money, back then.
No. Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a huge amount of money. I mean, we're looking at like over
£3,000.
3,000. Yeah. Yeah. Now, several witnesses remember seeing Mr. Matan that night of the murder. There's lots of people that say that they saw him. No one reports seeing this guy covered in blood. No one reports seeing him acting shiftily or strangely. And at the trial, it was said by the prosecution that Mahmoud Matan had been in possession of a knife or razor several times before the murder, and that each time it was not for a lawful purpose. So he said, well, no, I have got a knife, I have got a razor, but that's just for shaving. I haven't got a razor for anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit confused as to what was this possession? How could it be not for a lawful purpose?
Right.
If he went around the streets brandishing it, then yeah, I get it. But I mean, what else could you have a razor for if it's not lawful?
I'm so confused. I'm so confused right now about all of this.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about now this whole, I saw on Bridge Street, he was in my shop buying clothes between 8:30 and 9.
Yeah.
Which you would think, that kind of
that rules him out.
There's rules him out. But it doesn't though, really, because if you committed the murders at 8:20.
Yeah. So a mile and a half
away. So it's like a 15-minute walk. So he could get there by 8:35, 8:40, which is between 8:30 and 9 o'clock.
Yeah, but he would be surely covered in blood.
Oh, no. Oh, obviously.
Yeah,
obviously,
he's going to have to have got changed.
Yeah, I mean, no. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, I'm like, that doesn't really eliminate him as a person of interest or a suspect.
No.
But then I don't know. It's like, you can't. I think I can trust this woman, this shopkeeper. The second-hand clothes store.
Yeah,
I can trust her. So yeah, I would believe that this guy was in between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. But then everyone else, it's like.
Well, here's a few more for you. Go on, go.
Well, no. I was just gonna say too, is how does everyone know who this guy is, or do they?
Exactly.
I absolutely saw Mr. Matan at this place. It seems like everyone knows him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the other thing, okay? So another person that said that they saw him that evening was a guy that worked at the Central Cinema. Now, this is at the Hayes in Cardiff. He said he was on the door from 3:30 that day. He was on duty for an hour, taking the tickets from people coming in. He said that he saw Mahmoud Matan come in at about 3:45. He said he knew him by sight and that he was wearing a hat, okay? He also said that then he went on duty again at the entrance of the door to cinema, saying that people normally come in and out through that door, but there is an emergency exit at the front of the cinema. He was on duty until 8 p.m. that evening and said it was quite possible that Mahmoud had come out during that time, but he didn't see him. So he saw he saw him go into the cinema, didn't see him leave, but he was wearing a hat. And this is quite significant because Mahmoud had separated from his wife around 18 months earlier, okay? His wife had lived at a place in Davis Street, number 8, and Mahmoud lived on the opposite side of the street, which was number 42, sorry. Now, his ex-mother-in-law said that he called at her house that night at about 2 minutes past 8. She said he asked her, would you like any cigarettes? And she said, no, I haven't got any money. She said it was quite dark and she didn't really take much notice of what he was wearing, but noted he was wearing a hat. So that's now the second person that saw Mahmoud that day wearing a hat. Now, none of the people at the general store have said that the guy that was there was wearing a hat. Everybody else who seems to know Mahmoud, that has seen him, they are all saying he wore a hat that day. Now, there's a lady who ran another general store, and this is at 4 Adam Street in Cardiff. She said she knew Mahmoud Matan. He used to call at her shop for cigarettes. She said she knew his family, she knew his wife, knew his kids, knew his mother-in-law. She said that on the 6th of March, she was preparing to visit a friend, and between 7:30 and 7:45, Mahmoud called in and asked for players, so a type of cigarettes. She said she didn't have any, and then said that he left. She said as far as she could see, he was wearing a hat and a sort of dust coat, but couldn't swear to the colour. She said he wasn't in the shop for more than a minute or two and said that he just asked for cigarettes and then he went. So she places him there in her shop between 7:30 and 7:45. The mother-in-law places him at her house between 8:02 and 8:03 p.m. Okay, so now he's got to get from his mother-in-law's house at 8:02 to then go all the way to Lily's shop to then be the person that was seen outside. He was told by officers at the time that he was arrested that he would die for Lily's murder, whether he did it or not.
Whoa.
That's what he was told. He would die for her murder, whether he did it or not. Now, during the case, a prosecution witness altered his statement and was given a reward for giving evidence in court.
Given what?
Yeah, it was rewarded for giving evidence in court. So this just goes to show you what kind of case we're looking at, right? The trial for Mr. Mahmood took place at the Glamorgan Assizes in Swansea, 22nd to 24th of July, 1952. Evidence was presented that microscopic specks of blood had been found on a pair of Mr. Matan's shoes. But the shoes had been reclaimed from a salvage dump. So there was no evidence, no scientific evidence linking the blood on the shoes to Lily Volpert's murder.
Oh, yeah, that could have been from anything.
It could have been from anything at all. He got them from a salvage dump.
Yeah.
And this is another frustrating thing from this case. Mr. Matan's barrister was really good at getting quite a lot of the prosecution evidence ruled inadmissible. Because a lot of the time, suspects have been questioned in custody and it hadn't been handled very well, to be honest. It's probably the best way to put it. When you actually read the trial transcripts and you actually read the interviews, they're ridiculous. There's no structure to them. It is a ridiculous. I mean, it's crazy. You can find them online. But then, in his closing speech, he described his client as a half child of nature, half semi-civilized savage.
Oh my God!
It was
his
own client. That's how he decided. That's what he described his client as, a semi-civilized savage. What does that tell the jury?
That is insane.
Now, these comments, that they now believe, since looking back into this case, could have prejudiced the jury, obviously, and undermined undermined his defence.
Could have.
I know. So he was then convicted of the murder of Lily Volpert, and the judge passed the mandatory sentence of death.
On what?
Yeah, on those grounds. So on the 20th of August, Mr. Matan, Mahmood Matan, he then decided to appeal because obviously he didn't think that this was fair, and the appeal was dismissed. And on the 3rd of September 1952, 6 months after the murder of Lily Volpert, he was hanged at Cardiff Prison.
6 months?
Yeah, he was hanged at Cardiff Prison. And he was the last person to be hanged in Wales.
What the...
Exactly. This is exactly what I thought when I read this. I was like, they hanged him on that evidence.
There's no evidence.
There is no evidence other than this man, this Harold, saying that he saw him outside. He was the star witness, saying that this Harold Cover, he saw him leaving Lily's shop on the night of the murder.
No, but you said, okay, this was a star witness,
yeah.
Harold Cover.
Yeah.
But you said that he was arrested and sentenced. Was he arrested for something else?
Harold, I'm going to tell you about Harold in a second. So,
okay.
On the 3rd of September, when he was hanged, Laura, his wife, absolutely always protested his innocence. She, bless her, had to stand outside Cardiff Prison with her 3 young sons whilst he was hanged. I just find that absolutely awful. But following Mahmood's death, Harold Cover, the star main witness in the trial, was convicted of attempting to murder his own daughter, wait for it, by slitting her throat with a razor.
So the guy who's a star witness, who places himself at the scene,
seeing the suspect at the scene,
murders his own daughter.
Tries to murder her. She didn't die, luckily.
Tries to murder his daughter
Mm-hmm.
by slitting her throat
Yeah.
with a razor blade.
Yeah.
That's not suspicious.
Well, funny you should talk about suspicious, because the suspicions against Harold being the murderer had some pretty decent substance to them. So the similarity of the offence committed against Lily and his daughter, okay, unlike Mr. Matan, he had a moustache, which is what the lady in the shop said. The person she was talking to had a moustache and was dark-skinned. Now, also, after his attack on his daughter, but before he got convicted, a woman who lived in Mount Stewart Street, who was said to have been about 20 years of age, told a Somali community leader that she had recognised Cover as the man she saw standing by the entrance to Miss Volpert's shop at 8:05 on the night of the murder.
Oh my God.
It said that the woman had been accompanied by another woman who had also recognised him, and that their names and addresses were known by the women, and that they were all prepared to make statements to the police. And then somebody else comes forward and says that she remembered seeing Harold Cover near the shop at the time. She said that, like the woman with the clothes shop, Harold Cover had only volunteered this evidence after Lily's family had offered the reward money. So it was all after the reward money had come out.
Wait a second. But the shop owner of the secondhand clothes store was said, oh, well, she came in after the reward money, so then her statement
doesn't count.
Doesn't count, but his does.
Yeah.
Because his statement goes towards what the police wanted, was a conviction of
the Somali man,
Mr. Matan. Yeah.
So he was convicted of attempted murder, Harold, and he was sentenced to life in prison. So he's now gone to prison for attempted murder. He was placed at the scene by not one, not two, but 3 different women.
And himself.
And the women that were also in the shop at the time, who described this guy with the moustache.
Mm-hmm. Now let's compare that to Mahmoud Matan, right? Who said he wasn't there.
He wasn't there.
Who no one could really place him there. And
he also was wearing a hat that night.
It.
Yeah, he was wearing a hat that night. Everybody else that knew him said he was wearing this hat.
Who was seen in other locations away from the store.
Yeah. It was only placed at the scene by this guy, who is now in prison for attempted murder of his own daughter. And they hanged him. They hanged him for this. Is not a decent enough investigation.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that the police would have been so gung-ho towards arresting and getting a conviction on Mahmoud Matan if he hadn't married a local woman?
I agree with you entirely. Exactly what I thought.
Yeah.
So this led to Mahmoud Matan's case being reviewed in 1969. And then on the 23rd of September 1997, now this was a newly formed criminal case review commission. They reviewed the case and then referred it to the Court of Appeal, which actually resulted in Mahmoud Matan's conviction being quashed on the 24th of February 1998.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a very good consolation to his family, is it? That all those years
it's not.
He had been known as a murderer. Plus, he lost his life because of it, when actually the police have now come forward and said that the evidence at the trial was unreliable. The evidence given by Harold Cover at the appeal hearing was not credible. That all of his previous convictions, because I mean, listen to the convictions that he's got. I mean, Harold Cover himself has got some pretty not very great backstory himself. He has been known to be violent. His wife said that he was violent. His family have said that he was quite an angry man. Another woman has said that she knew him to be quite angry. So this guy has already got sort of a backstory of being quite a violent man himself. Yet nobody really looked into him at the time.
Because all they wanted was their guy to be hanged. That's what they wanted.
Well, It was further heard that actually the description that Harold Cover gave of Mahmoud Matan that night in his police statement doesn't actually match Mahmoud Matan at all.
Oh my God.
So the star witness
Okay.
who is saying that he saw this guy, when you actually put the description and Mahmoud together, they don't match.
So he had no idea who Mahmoud Matan was at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. What a mess.
Oh my God. Okay. It's
Right.
unbelievable.
Are you ready for a however moment?
Oh God. Okay. Let's do it.
However, another suspect also came into the limelight. Now, in 1954, a man called Taher Gas was a 34-year-old Somali seaman, and he had stabbed a man called Granville Jenkins to death and had left his body in a stream at Dufferin near Newport. Now, Granville Jenkins was a wages clerk and worked at the same place that Taher Gas worked. He had stabbed Granville Jenkins 32 times in the neck and the head.
Jesus.
Now, he had been seen by a policeman on the 10th of June 1954 lying underneath a hedge in a field. When the policeman approached him, he walked away. The policeman caught up with him and asked him where he was going and what he was doing, and he just said, "Me no sleep for 2 nights." Obviously, he's Somalian, doesn't speak very good English, so,
Okay. Yeah.
Now, after Granville Jenkins was found dead, having been murdered about an hour before he was found, the police carried out a search and found that Taher was in Will Lane, where he was chased through a hedge and into this field. While he was being chased, he pulled out a knife, but he threw it away and then was arrested. When he was caught by the police, the first thing he said was, "Are you taking me to Cardiff?" When he was charged with murder, he said, "I not kill nobody." Now, he had been living as a lodger at a house run by a couple who rented rooms out to Somalis. He had gone off and gone camping for a few days. The woman who he had been lodging with said that he was a bit simple. That's a quote, a bit simple. And that she had known him for about 4 to 5 years. She said that he had been in Whitchurch Mental Hospital before and that he talked about living out and saying that the birds were his wireless. So the birds were like his radio at the time. The woman said that he couldn't get a job and that she asked him to leave on the 8th of June because he wasn't paying his way. At his trial, medical evidence was presented that he was suffering from schizophrenia and was delusional. He was then found to be insane and was sent to Broadmoor Prison. But less than a year later, he was discharged and he was repatriated back to British Somaliland. He was the man to have believed to have been the person that Harold Cover saw outside Lily Volpert's shop that night. I know. It's audible size, isn't there? It's audible size. It's just, it's mad.
Well, first off, I don't believe anything that Harold Cover has to say.
No, me too.
Let me just put that.
I agree.
So how do we know that? First off, how do we know? Well,
yeah. First off, where do we even start?
Where do we even start?
Yeah.
Okay, so Harold Cover, who puts himself at the scene, who first said, "Oh, I saw Mahmoud Matan at the shop."
Yeah.
Now they're saying, "Oh, it wasn't him, but it was this other guy."
Yeah.
This other Somalian.
Yeah. Because
how do we know that he actually?
Yeah. How do we know that he actually saw anybody? How do we know that it wasn't Harold that killed Lily? And he's just picking up on the whole Somali immigrant thing as a cover because the police are generally going to be more prejudiced against a Somalian than they are against a native, somebody from Cardiff. So how do we know that it wasn't him that went in there and did it? Because he's got a violent background. We know that he tried to kill his daughter in the same way that Lily was killed. How do we know it wasn't him?
So this is Harold Cover saying, "Oh no, it was Taher Gas I saw outside the store."
Well, that's who they believed he might have seen because now they're believing that actually he didn't see Mahmoud at all. He thinks he's saying that he saw Mahmoud, but his description of Mahmoud doesn't match Mahmoud.
This case is people just throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yes. This case is just a random bunch of people saying they think they saw, but then they didn't see. He was there, but then he couldn't have been there. But they kind of have ignored all of those people that said, "No, I saw Mahmoud. I know Mahmoud. I saw him at this shop. He went to get cigarettes. He was with me at this time." They've ignored all of the pretty credible explanations for where he is and the alibis that he's got for this one guy who's saying, "I saw him," when actually Did he see him? You know? And then they've hanged the guy for that. They've actually hanged him on this one guy's evidence, which has proved to be not right.
This is unbelievable.
It's crazy, isn't
This is
it?
unbelievable.
It's just...
Yeah.
I mean, it would be bad enough if he spent 6 months in prison for something he didn't do, but they hanged the guy.
Mm-hmm. I think this tear gas is another just...
Yeah.
Oh, look, it could have been this guy.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
I think everyone listening can say, okay, it was not Mahmoud Matan, right?
It would seem that the evidence points that way, going back in hindsight and looking at it.
It does. Yeah. I'm still, this Harold covers, like, this...
The
guy puts himself at the scene.
I know. And nobody's looking at him in a shady way whatsoever. I would love to get the full case files for this. I mean, it's had a full case review, but I would love to get the case files for this and to actually sit them into these different witnesses, because the witnesses cross over each other all the time. The two women in the shop. I did see this. I didn't see this. I did actually see this. I saw him down the road. No, I didn't see him down the road. So I would get rid of them straight away as any kind of credible witness. I would discount their statements because they obviously don't know what they're saying. So I'd get rid of both of them. Then I would look at like the cinema guy who's got no reason to give Mr. Mr. Matan an alibi. The cigarette lady in the other shop, I would count her evidence as a pretty credible evidence because she's got no reason to stick up for him. The mother-in-law, she said he was wearing a hat, he was wearing a coat. The woman in the shop said he was wearing a hat and a coat. The guy in the cinema said he was wearing a hat and a coat. So we're all talking about the same man. They all are known. They know who that guy is. So I would be more inclined to go with their evidence over this one guy who says he saw this man like coming out of the shop shortly before she was dead. Doesn't mean to say he murdered her just because he saw her in the vicinity of the shop. How does that make him a murderer, even if he was there just after? He might have come to the shop to get cigarettes, seen her on the floor and thought, shit, I don't want to get in trouble for this, and gone. So he's only guilty of what? Not trying to help her, not of murder. It was all kind of messed up, this case. Now, in 1966, the family was actually given permission to have Mahmoud's body exhumed from the felon's grave at the prison, and they buried him in consecrated ground in Cardiff Cemetery. But his tombstone, I saw a picture of his tomb. It's so sad. It says on it, "Killed by injustice."
Oh.
It's really sad. Now, when the Criminal Cases Review Commission was set up in the mid-1990s, they did... Mr. Matan's case was the first case that they did. And on the 24th of February 1998, the Court of Appeal came to the judgment that the original case was, in their words, flawed. The family were then awarded £725,000 in compensation. And this was equally shared between Mahmoud's wife and his 3 children. And on the 3rd of September 2022, and this is why it came up just recently and I saw it, it was the 70th anniversary of his execution. And it was announced then that South Wales Police had issued an apology to his family, admitting that the prosecution was flawed. 70 years later, it was they apologised for his
the least they could do
for his death.
The least they could do.
But Lily Volpert's killer is still unknown to this day, and the case is still unsolved.
And I'm assuming Harold Cover is dead by now.
Yeah, because he's obviously was in prison. So
this is unbelievable.
Isn't it the most frustrating case you've ever heard? And the fact that with that evidence, or lack of evidence, they actually put a man to death with that evidence.
That is unbelievable.
It's injustice at its finest. And thankfully, that was the last ever hanging case in Wales. There was not another one after that. Thank goodness.
Was it just circumstance, or they get rid of the hanging, or
I think it was just.
Was that the last
I think
one?
it was just. It was circum. I think that was it. It wasn't. I don't think it was due to his case, but that was the last ever hanging. I think the jurisdiction changed after that, and they abolished it.
That is unbelievable.
That poor bloke, though. I mean, that poor man going to prison to start with for something he didn't do. and then for being hanged for something he didn't know in full well you didn't do it. Because if you look at the evidence does not point to him at all.
Yeah.
No one
He
actually
was
says they saw that man in particular, him, because even Harold's description of the man doesn't match Mahmoud. So how they've convicted him of
no.
it, I really don't know. I don't know what grounds the police had to say that Mahmoud was the person that did this to Lily.
Yeah, I'm reading his statement,
Yeah.
the statement that Harold made to the police.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is
It
insane.
doesn't make any sense either when you read the statement. I mean, that's the thing. I could have read you all of there's a whole transcript online of the actual interviews by the police with different witnesses.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could just go through them and read them all to you, but they don't, a lot of them don't actually make much sense at all.
Mm-hmm. But it almost sounds like in the statement that there were like two people that were at the store, one coming out, which he eventually would say, "Oh yeah, that was Mahmoud," right? But it's just like there's nothing here, which is like, "Oh yeah, it's absolutely him."
No, I mean,
Well, first off, he's lying,
and he hasn't got a moustache, and everybody else says that the guy coming out of the shop had a moustache. And Mahmoud doesn't have one, hasn't had one, didn't grow one
He
just for the
said he would describe
afternoon.
him 5'10",
Yeah.
slight build, thin faced,
And Somalian,
or
which
then he changed it Somalian, or he said Maltese.
yeah,
in here as well.
So it's not even a definite Somalian, but I mean,
No.
at that time back then, there were a lot of Somalians that came over to work in the docks. So, I would
Think he
say
had
if
a
you
gold tooth.
asked a group of, say, Somalian people to describe a white person, they're going to say that we all kind of look the same. Let's say men with beards, for example. I had this conversation with Captain once. They all say that white men with beards all look the same. And it's like, no, they don't. They don't all look the same. Because we had this conversation at CrimeCon. I can't remember who the lady was. It was one of our listeners. And she said, "You look like Morgan." And he said, "No, I don't." And she said, "Yes, you do. I think it's the beard." And he said, "Are you saying that all white men with beard look the same?" And she laughed and she said, "Actually, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying." And he just laughed and he said, "Well, that's not true, is it? Because we don't all look the same." And because she was a black lady, and she said, "That's the same as us. Not all black men look the same." It was like, that's funny, exactly. Isn't it? How you do it like that. So yeah, it was quite interesting. I think that was the lady that came to CrimeCon America, the one that went around and took all the photos.
Oh, the one
I forget her name off the top of my head.
That went to CrimeCon UK as well.
Yes, yeah.
She was from France.
France, yes, right? Yeah. I'm sure it was her. I'm sure it was her that it was her that I spoke to about it. We talked about how they say that everyone Sonia. That's who it was. It was Sonia from CrimeCon. And she said, "The captain, that you look like Morgan." And he's like, "Why? Because I've got a beard and I'm a white guy." And she was like, "Yeah." And he was like, that's not right. So yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, Lily's case, all these years later, still unsolved.
I mean, I don't want to be, you had injustice with Mahmoud Matan, right?
Yeah.
Obviously injustice. And I don't, and I'm going to sit here and I'm like, I don't want to be like, "Oh, this is injustice for me to say it was Harold Cover." But I want to say it's Harold Cover.
Yeah. If you look at the suspects, we've got this guy who's like schizophrenic and has just stabbed a guy with a knife, like a lot of times, not just once, stabbed him plenty times. So could it have been him? Yes, it could have been. He had a moustache, he had dark skin, could have been him. Could it have been Harold? Pretty strange that Harold has slit his own daughter's throat in very similar circumstances not long after. Yeah. So could it have been him? Yes. Can we 100% say, with the information we've just been given, that Mahmoud Matan was the man that killed Lily Volpert? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. We can't say that. Exactly. So what does that tell you? Yeah. That just tells you that there was not enough evidence in this case to prosecute him, let alone put him in prison and then kill him.
The other interesting thing that I got from Harold Cover's statement, and I'm assuming that some of this is true, but he says that at the Maltese lodging house, which is right next to Volpert's shop, he said that he passed there was a crowd of Maltese outside.
Yeah.
So, he said there were at least 8 of them, but none of them were questioned.
No. And
Because all we had is just we just have the 2 women who are
yeah, I was just
obviously
about to say that those two
locals.
women who don't say anything about this 8 people outside.
That and not yeah, and so you can't go and figure out, like, okay, well, who was actually there and who actually
Mm,
saw what happened.
yeah. Who saw what?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. There's a lot in this case that's just so frustrating when you read through it. And you can go online, and there are Wales Online was one of the newspapers that I read, the articles that I read through. There's quite a lot on the Wales
Mhm.
Online website. And you can read through the different things. There's also another website that came up when I was looking through it. Wikipedia did have some, but it wasn't very detailed. But there was some other websites that I read through where they give you full transcripts of the things. And those 2 women that they talked to,
Mhm.
they were very sketchy about all different things. Like, they would say one thing, and then afterwards they would come back and say, oh, actually, no, it wasn't that, it was this instead. Then they would come back again and say, oh no, well, I think in one point they said that they were in the pub or something, and one of the ladies was cold, so she went to buy a headscarf, and that's why they went into Lily's shop. And then she said afterwards that it was something else, and she was meeting her partner or something. And it was just like, oh, it's very confusing, ladies, when you've got somebody who's just been brutally murdered and you're giving all these different answers to where you were and what you were doing. Surely there's only one answer, which is the truth. So what is all this that you keep saying and don't saying? You know?
Yeah. This case is crazy.
It really is. And the more you seriously, I spent hours reading through different people's accounts of what was going on, and different people that said they saw Mahmood here and somebody else saw Mahmood somewhere else. And it's like, well,
Mhm.
who do you believe and who don't you believe? But the one certain thing I can say is that we don't know 100% that that was Mahmood that did that. Not enough to convict the guy, let alone to hang him. That's the one thing we can take from this. And I'm glad that
Yeah.
his stuff was quashed. I'm glad that his conviction was quashed, and that eventually, even though it's no resolution whatsoever, but I'm glad that in the end he wasn't labelled as a murderer and he wasn't buried in a felon's grave, because that's just
Yes.
rubbing salt in the wounds for his family. And although 750 grand will make life slightly more comfortable for his family, it's not the same as having your parent and having your husband.
No, exactly. Exactly. Wow.
Mm.
Well, thank you for that.
No problem. It's probably one that I thought that people wouldn't have heard of, and I thought it was quite an interesting case. And yeah, by all means, go online and read up about it, because there's loads of things that you'll probably come back to me and say, "But you didn't mention this and you didn't mention that," and I can't, because there's just not enough time to go through every single person that was involved in this case. So there will
Yeah.
be other people that when you read through it, you'll read and go, "What? Why did they say that? And who is this guy saying this?" Because there's so many of them,
Yeah.
so many.
No, you're absolutely
It's
right.
crazy.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So poor old Mahmood. 70 years is
Yeah.
his anniversary just recently. 70 years after he was executed, and finally they've issued an apology. I mean, it's not the police
Yeah.
that are involved now. It's not their fault that this is 70 years
No,
ago.
exactly.
But the actual force has issued an apology for him. So that's something, I guess.
Yeah. It seems like to me, it seems like it was just a case of the police had someone in mind who they
And they
wanted
built the case
to
around
nick
it.
for it. They
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah. And they built the case around
Unbelievable.
that person.
I mean,
Sad.
it is. You have multiple victims
You
of
do.
this crime.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not just Lily who is a victim. You've now got Mahmood, who's another victim, and also their families. Both families have suffered
Yeah.
because they don't know who actually did this. So the person that did do it
Yeah.
was still out roaming the streets
Yeah. And let's say it was Harold Cover, then you have another victim in
in
his
his daughter.
daughter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's just
If
mad.
the police would have done, an actual job, their actual job, and actually policed this and
Mm,
investigated it, maybe they would have found out Harold Cover was a good suspect
yeah.
and that he did it, and he could have been thrown in jail, and his daughter would never have been attacked like she did.
Mm. And thankfully she survived, but how traumatic must that have been? Your own dad.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrible.
I wonder what she did to warrant that attack. I wonder what could you do
Nothing.
to warrant that
No way.
attack?
Nothing. There's no way.
No.
Unbelievable.
So
Oh,
at
well,
this
thank you
point
for
in our
that.
show, you're welcome. At this point in our show, it's time to lighten the load a little bit, and it's time for us to do our little dumb criminal segment.
This one is a dummy. So this story actually comes from the great state of Ohio,
Oh,
and it
H-I-O.
just happened last week. So, Sherry, what if I were to ask you? I'm going to ask you this: what would be the worst time to steal a car?
The worst time?
But besides any time, but
Okay.
if you had to steal a car, what would be the worst time to steal a car?
When there's loads of people around.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
How about stealing a car while police were making a traffic stop and arresting the driver of the car that you're going to steal?
No.
Yes. So a woman in Nelsonville, Ohio, is accused of leading a police on a half-hour high-speed chase, and after she had stolen a 2017 Nissan SUV while police were making a traffic stop in Buttrell, Ohio. This was back on October 29th.
Okay.
Okay. Now, according to Athens County Prosecutor's Office, the woman, Hannah Warren, allegedly approached the stopped car while police were serving an active warrant on the driver. As the officers took the driver to his squad car, Warren got into the driver's seat of the Nissan and sped
I thought
off.
I'd just have that. Thanks very much. I'll just take the car. Oh, no.
Exactly, yeah. So police in Nelsonville spotted the SUV and gave chase, and they followed the car for about 30 minutes through the city. Eventually, Warren did crash the car into one of the police officers' car and stopped the Nissan near a tree.
Oh,
Now,
my
Warren
God.
then tried to get out of the car and tried to run away, but a pursuing officer tased her and arrested her. Now, in addition to stealing the car, Hannah Warren allegedly told police that she had drugs in her backpack.
Oh, my God.
And according to prosecutor's office, they searched the backpack and found narcotics in syringes, including one filled with methamphetamine.
This woman just wants to go to jail, doesn't she? She just wants to go to
Obviously.
prison. She does.
Yeah. So she was charged with 2 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of failure to comply with an order or signal of a police officer.
1 count of being an
Vandalism.
absolute dumbass.
Yeah, exactly, right? Vandalism, receiving stolen property, and grand theft of a motor vehicle. So, yeah, how about you not try to steal a car when there's A, police right there, and B, when the police are arresting the driver or the car owners, the owner of the car, right?
That is the dumbest thing. That is crazy. What an opportunist. Oh, yeah, while the police there stop that car, I'm just going to nick it and run away.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna,
thank you for that. No,
I'm going to have drugs in the back
Right?
of my bag too, and I'm going to tell them all about
Oh.
it. Oh, God.
So that's a dumb criminal. I actually have a bonus one since we just had Halloween not too long ago. I found this one, which I wanted to share with you as well. Okay. So police in Roachdale, Indiana, may have wished they had a Pokeball in order to help catch a wild Pikachu spotted driving a lawnmower recklessly through a small town on the streets on Halloween.
Those damn Pikachus.
So, in what the Rochelle Police Department assured was a first, an officer found himself in pursuit of a 19-year-old citizen dressed as Pikachu
Oh, my goodness.
on Halloween night, giving both police and witnesses a night to remember. Now, officers say that the suspect had been recklessly driving the modified lawnmower through the town with a trailer in tow,
Recklessly
while
driving a
children dressed as
lawnmower.
ghosts and ghouls prowled the streets in pursuit of candy. Okay.
Oh.
Now, as a deputy located the lawnmower driver and quickly realized it was no ordinary driver, but other than a rare Pokemon, the lawnmower Pikachu. Now, when the deputy attempted to make a traffic stop on the lawnmower, the Pikachu turned around, flipped off the deputy, and continued on.
Those damn Pikachus. Oh, that's brilliant.
Now, the Pikachu was able to actually get away from the police for a while, but unfortunately, they were able to identify him.
Yeah, with his like yellow face and yellow tail.
Yes, and they were able to arrest him at his home after a brief scuffle.
Take him off to Pikachu. Prison.
Oh my God, Pikachu is he's a little wild.
It is a little wild. It's a very crazy. Rare, little crazy Pikachu, man. Very, very rare as well. Talking of
I'm gonna
Rochdale, you just
Yeah.
reminded me we need to say hello
Oh.
to Molly, don't we?
We
Because
do. Hello,
because
Molly.
in America they pronounce Rochdale, obviously up north in England, as Rochdale, and she told you off for
Yeah,
pronouncing it wrong. Molly is your lovely sister,
she is.
and she told you off because you don't pronounce it right.
And Molly, this is Roachdale, Indiana, because it's spelled Roachdale. So it is absolutely Roachdale.
Yeah, not Rochdale, as we know and love in England. But hello, Molly, and thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Now, if you do enjoy the show, if you've enjoyed this episode, we would love for you to leave us a rating. You can give us a rating on whatever podcast app it is that you use, because we've now slipped out of the Latvian chart for true crime,
Oh,
which is really
no.
sad. I'm sad about that. But
Very
we were
sad.
very excited because we were like the top 100 in Latvia at one point in the true crime chart. So we were very excited about that. Every review, even if you don't write anything, every review that we get does help us slip back up the charts. So we would love for you guys to give us a review and add to some. I was reading back some of the funny, like some of the reviews that we've had on our podcast, and some of them were really funny. Some of them are lovely, and some of them are. I read them and was like, what? So yeah, go and have, if you want a bit of fun, just go and read our reviews. They are quite comical, some of them. And what else do we need to tell you about? Something else I was trying to think.
I was gonna say, if you enjoy our podcast, consider joining our Patreon,
Mhm.
which you can do by going to patreon.com/crimepedia, and you can join for as little as $2 per month. And with that, I want to say thank you to Penny, who joined our Patreon recently. So thank you for doing
Woo!
that.
Thank you, Penny.
So if you want to join Penny and you want to, you
It's a
wanna
lovely
get
community, our
episodes.
Patreons.
It
Yeah,
is. It is. It's
it's a
really
really
wonderful. So
nice
if you want to,
community of people.
you'll get our episodes ad free, and we also include our Crimepedia Extra, which we do before each and every episode. Usually, it's about what, around an extra half hour,
Yeah,
40 minutes,
and
sometimes
then
before each episode. We do a little extra. Yeah.
once a month we'll do our case closed, in which we cover a case that's been solved, so we can give you a kind of extra episode, and it's usually cases that maybe you'll know about, maybe you won't. We've covered the case of Sarah Everard already. We've also covered, I can't remember which one I did last time now, thinking about it, I can't remember. They all blur into one. But yeah, so we cover new episodes, but those ones are solved, so you do actually get a solution to those, because most of our cases that we do on this show are unsolved, so it's quite a nice, something a bit different for you.
No, absolutely.
So thank you for joining us. We will be back next week with another episode. It will be Morgan's episode. For now, be nice.
And bye.